Hi everyone, welcome to the tutorial series about JDBC titled Simply JDBC. In this today's presentation, we will be saying about how to use a thin driver, that is a type 4 driver. In the last lecture, up to last lecture, we know how to create a table, and I have also shown you how a query for creating a table is generated by a tool like SQL Workbench. So now, since we have created a table in my previous presentation, I have titled the table as employee. So now let's try to see more details about how do we go about using this thin driver or a type 4 driver. So let's try to get into details. So if I want to now connect to MySQL server, as I have told you, we need to load the driver. So let's see the nomenclature or the working or the details with respect to how this is accessed or how a database is accessed. So here the first step is about class.forName, and then you are going to give the full path or the full driver name, that is com.mysql.jdbc.driver in double quotes. That is, this forName method basically takes the full name of the driver, which it helps to load the particular driver. Okay, so once we basically are done with it, then you are going to get a connection object. We'll go into the details later, but essentially we are going to get a connection by using something called as a driver manager. So driver manager dot get connection, and in that now you are going to give the full path of where the database is located along with its access credential, that is username and password. So let's see the how it is broken. So here JDBC is an API, you can see it here, I'm highlighting it. So JDBC is the API, then MySQL is the database. So this is a way URL or a unique way of accessing a database. So JDBC colon MySQL, then colon, then slash, then localhost, that is a server name on which MySQL is running. Now this localhost need not be on your same machine as of now, because in this tutorial we are using localhost, but it can be on any particular IP. So here you need to actually give an IP. Okay, then the port. So here by default typically database server runs on 3306, so you need not every time give unless you have changed the port name. So localhost, then colon 3306, that is the port number, and then the name of the database. So name of the database could be a test or a study or whatever. So here this method, this is get connection, that is driver manager dot get connection, is going to take three parameters. The first one is the complete URL, where this is the URL of the database along with the port and the name of the database. Then the second parameter is the username. So the username could be root or whatever the username that you are using it for the database, and then the password or as a third parameter. So it takes three parameters. I hope this is clear, because this is very important point. If you are clear with this, then you can access any other database which is residing on some other machine, need not be on the same machine. Then the operations that you can do using a thin driver are called as CRUD. CRUD stands for create, retrieve or read, and then update and delete. So create, read, update and delete. So it is also called as insert, read, update and delete. So that means in a table of database table I can do four operations. That means I can insert a record, I can read the inserted record, then I can update whatever I have inserted, I can change it. Say if I want to change the name or whatever, I can change that, and then if I don't like or if there is some issue, then I can always delete it. Okay, so this is called as CRUD. So let's try to understand it. So if I want to enter a data into the table, then I am going to make use of a statement, and the statement will be will make use of a connection object, because in the previous statement or in the previous slide I have shown you that you are going to get a connection object like this. So when I do get connection, you are going to get a connection object. So using this connection object, now you are going to execute the you are basically going to create a statement, and then you are going to execute the statement like execute update or execute query, like that. We will see actually when we go into the code. This is just a snapshot. So you can actually execute a statement, whatever the statement. Say for example, I want to insert into a table, say insert into employee table, and then the values are say 1001, and then the name of the employee is Sunil. So that particular such a SQL query is given, and then this connector or the proper driver, the connector, that is we have the jar file, so that will basically make this particular jar file is used for when you want to execute the different statements. Okay, like you want to create first object, then using that you basically are going to execute the different query statements. So first step is you need to create a statement, and then you either execute the query or you update the query. So we'll see this in detail later. Then you can also read the statement, read the record. So similarly, you can have a statement dot execute query, and then you can have a query like select star from some table, so say employee table, and then it's going to return me a result state, which is going to be a list of records, or so where I'm going to do iteration. So it's an iterator. So RS is an iterator, so we'll be using it. Then similarly, you can update records. So for example, I want to do updation, then I can update. Say for example, the earlier name was say whatever, for this particular entry 1001, the earlier name was say Sunil. Now I want it to change it to say Ramesh. Then I can actually write my update query, where the update query like update employee, that is table, and then set name is equal to Ramesh, where ID is equal to employee ID is equal to 1001. Okay, so this is an update query. Then delete. So again I am going to use this statement dot execute update, and here I am going to say delete from employee, where employee ID is equal to 1001. So in that case it's going to delete the particular record for a primary key, that is employee ID is equal to 1001. So this basically in nutshell the 4 CRUD operation, that is insert, reading, then update and delete, that you can perform on a particular table. Now we will be doing all these operations on this employee table, and we will be using thin driver or pure Java driver, which is a type 4 driver. Now let's quickly summarize, or let's try to understand when to use execute update and when to use execute query, because there are 2 statements that I have just shown you. So one is execute update and another is execute query. So execute update is used most of the time because to update the table, then you are going to create it, because creation of table you can also use execute update to create a table, but which we have just shown it by using a SQL that is workbench tool. So even programmatically you can create a table, but people won't do that because it's not a repetitive job. Most of the times either you will update a table, like I mean to say you'll update the values in the table, or you will basically run some query. So another query is another method that will be used is for executing SQL statement is execute query. So execute update and execute query are the 2 methods, and for most of the times execute update will be used for inserting and updating a record, and execute query will be used to read the record. Then execute query is used most of the times, because most of the times you do the SQL read activity, and update then that means you can do either insert, then you can update and you can delete. These are not very often done. Most of the time you are going to do fetching, that is something called as reading of the records, where like typically example is if you want to say search selected city, a particular city, then you will once again do read operation. Like that, these are the various examples of read operations. Like you can have selection a particular city, then particular name to be selected, then particular roll number to be selected. Like that, you can have multiple examples. So most of the times you will be doing execute query, and execute update also will be used, but execute update is hardly used or very rarely used for creating a table. So that's it as part of the today's presentation. In the next presentation we will actually start with working with the code base. Thank you.